Hey guys, today I'm going to be upgrading the handle on this Tomahawk. So a couple of weeks ago I put on a tutorial on how to make the head and the handle of this Tomahawk, but the head is very good. It's made of high carbon steel and it's pretty sharp. It's a little bit dirty, but I can always polish it back up. But the handle isn't very good. It's made of some brittle hardwood and it's kind of falling apart, and I really need to take it off because it's quite dangerous at the moment. And also it's quite fat here, it's not very streamlined, and it reduces the Tomahawk's cutting capabilities for splitting logs and things like that. So my plan is to make a new handle out of some of this 3mm thick aluminium, and it'll be much more strong and it'll be flush with the outline of the Tomahawk, so it gives it way better cutting and splitting log capabilities. So the first thing I've got to do is remove the old handle. So to remove the handle, I'm basically taking a Stanley knife and cutting everything off and ripping all of the string and tape off, and then just pulling out the Tomahawk head. So this is what the Tomahawk head looks like once I take it out. It looks pretty bad and it's got a bit of glue on here and also lots of mud on here, and the blade's a bit scuffed and everything. So I'm going to clean that up on the belt sander. Also here you can see the handle and you can see how badly damaged it was. There was this large crack here that would have soon made its way all the way down to here, and then the head would have just completely broken off. Also a small crack was starting here, and I reckon a large impact would have just shattered the end of the handle off. So to resharpen up the Tomahawk blade and also to refine the edge, I'm just going to go to my belt sander, hold it at a certain angle, and then start slowly rotating it up and down the blade so that it resharpens it all up and also removes any scuffs and scratches left behind by using it previously. So this is what the blade looks like once I've finished it up on the belt sander. I've polished all of the edges again, and I've also made this bit sharp here so that when I chop through stuff and then it goes through and reaches this part will also chop through it instead of just hitting and bouncing off it. Now I'm designing the handle, which is going to bolt onto the Tomahawk, and that's going to be cut out of aluminium, and I'm just going to be designing this just using old-fashioned pencil and paper, since I can get the exact right dimensions. If I was going to use a program online or something like Inkscape on a computer, then it would have taken a lot of measuring and input into the computer. So this is the design for the aluminium part, which is going to attach securely onto the Tomahawk blade. And if I lay on the Tomahawk over this, you can see where it's going to attach. It's going to use these 4 bolts in the corner, and these are going to be tightened up incredibly tight. And then also what I'm going to do is I'm going to angle grind a slot into the metal here and then put in 4 pins. The reason that I can't just drill holes straight into this metal is because it's already very solid, and tempering it would probably risk softening any of this metal here, and it's much too hard to drill into even with solid carbide drill bits. So now I've cut out the paper template and I've glued it onto some 3mm thick sheet aluminium just using a Pritt stick. I'm using a jigsaw to roughly cut out the aluminium shape because the hacksaw won't reach this far down the metal. You could also use a much larger hacksaw, or you could also use a bandsaw or anything else that can cut through aluminium. Now that it's been roughly cut out using the jigsaw, I can then use the hacksaw with a metal cutting blade to quickly refine the shape of it. Using an 18 teeth per inch blade, I'm just going to cut about 1mm or 2mm away from the line to make sure I don't make the piece too small. So this is what the aluminium blank looks like after rough cutting it out with the hacksaw, and as you can see it's not very accurate to the lines, but it's just kind of the rough shape, and now I need to refine it just using metal files. So using the metal files, since before it was about 1mm or 2mm away from the lines, now I'm going to use the metal files to make it exactly to the lines, so that it's touching all of the lines, but I'm going to also make sure that I don't go over the lines. So this is what it looks like once I've cut it out and then refined all of the edges with files, and all of the edges are pretty smooth, and then once I put it on the blade of the Tomahawk I think it looks pretty cool. So now taking a regular center punch, I'm going to put it over the middle of all of the holes which I want to drill, and then I'm going to punch the holes. This then means that when I drill it with the drill bit, it's not going to go either side, and also when I take off the paper, I'm going to be able to see exactly where to drill. So now I'm going to use my drill press and a 6mm drill bit, because that's the same as my 6mm pins which I'm going to be using. And you don't have to use a drill press, I just use it because it's much quicker, and it's also much easier to align the holes completely vertical, but you could just use a normal hand drill as long as you're pretty good at getting them vertical. So once the holes have been drilled like this in all 4 of the corners, as you can see there's a massive burr coming out of the back and a tiny one coming out the front. So just take a much larger drill bit and deburr the edge. Now the burr is gone and it's smooth. So now the edges have been deburred on both sides, and I've left the paper on this side just so I can see clearly where I'm going to drill off the holes. And I've also left the protective plastic coating that comes on. This is just a sticky coating that when you peel it below, it's got a much more shiny aluminium surface below than on this side. And this is the side that's going to be showing on the Tomahawk, so I'm not going to take this off until the end. So now I've taken this piece and I've laid it down onto the aluminium sheet again, and then I've gone and drawn around it with a Sharpie pen. Yet again, I'm going to be using a jigsaw to cut the outline roughly, just because the hacksaw can't reach that far. So now that I've cut this out very roughly, I'm going to center punch through all of these holes and then drill them through with the 6mm drill bit. Once that's done, I can put all 4 bolts through, and these aren't even done up very tightly, like I've just done it up with my fingers, not even with a spanner. And this doesn't even move in the slightest, because all of these holes are the exact same size as the threaded rods. So now I'm just going to use hacksaw and files to shape these 2 pieces so they're exactly the same. I'm just going to cut down all of the edges and then file it down. While I'm doing this, I'm going to try to make sure to not change the shape of the original piece which I've bolted down onto the larger sheet, and just to shape the larger sheet to how the original piece looks. So once they've both been cut out and they're pretty much exactly the same, I can just loosely put the bolts on here and check that everything fits. It doesn't really wobble around very much, even though I've only tightened the bolts up with my fingers like this, and I can hit it against stuff and it's pretty solid. So now I take it apart and go to my original one, which has still got the template laid out. I'm going to drill out these 3 holes here, but I'm not actually going to do this 4th one here because I've decided I don't need it. So I took off this plate and drilled the holes through the first 3 holes, and I just took off this plate individually and then screwed it back on. So these holes only go through the first 3mm thick layer of aluminium, and now I've got the Tomahawk lined up exactly where I want it. I'm going to hammer nails partially in that'll hopefully mark this steel, and then I'll know where to cut with the angle grinder slot. I then join the dots on the steel and draw a line, and that's when I'm going to cut a slot with the angle grinder now. So now that I've cut the slot here with an angle grinder, I just did it with a thin cut-off wheel and enlarged it slightly. I can then put in each of the pins like this, and that really helps hold it in place once it's done. Now what I need to do is bolt these 2 sheets of metal together like this, and then go to the drill press and drill these holes all the way through. So if this has worked correctly, I should be able to just put the pins through now, if I find the right place. Look, there's the first one, and the second one should go through easily, and the third one. This one's a bit more difficult, but I managed to get it through. And even without tightening these up, look, they can just spin around. They're not tight at all. This barely wobbles at all. So once these are tightened up as hard as I can tighten them up, then this isn't going to wobble in the slightest. So now that that worked, I can take these apart, and I'm going to take off this protective wrapping here, just peel it away, and it leaves a really nice shiny surface below. I am also going to take off all of this paper here. So now that's done, it's really shiny on this side, it's pretty much reflective, and even though this side's really cut up, it doesn't matter because this is going to be the side pressing against the Tomahawk. Now I need to sharpen the edges, which are going to be tapering onto the Tomahawk, and I'm also going to deburr all of the other edges. I'm just going to sharpen these edges at a 45-degree angle, and I need to remember to make sure that I'm sharpening the right edges on the right side, because I really nearly accidentally sharpened them both on the same side, and then I would have had to start all over again with the aluminium. Also, as I'm doing this, I'm making sure that I'm going to deburr the rest of the aluminium edges. So I'm now going to spray paint all of the aluminium, and I'm also going to respray paint the blade since some of the rust behind it is showing through. And I'm just going to be using this black waterproof spray paint. So now this is what it looks like once it's been spray painted on both sides of this and on both sides of this. Now I'm going to use sandpaper and files to remove the paint on all of the bladed edges, including on the aluminium, so that it'll look much better. So this is what it looks like once I've done that, and I think it looks really cool now with the bladed edge here and then the bladed edge here, and also how shiny it is now just after using 120 grit sandpaper. Looks much better than it did before. So that's it for today, guys. Thanks for watching. That's the end of part 1. Stay tuned because soon I'll be uploading part 2 of the tutorial, finishing off the Tomahawk, adding a handle and paracord, wrapping it and everything, and then I'll be testing it out with splitting logs and chopping things up in slow motion. Thanks for watching, guys. I really hope that you've enjoyed this video, and if you have, please hit the like button down below and subscribe. If you did enjoy my video, you might like some of my others, and you can see previews of them here. If you want to find out the full videos, then go to my channel and check them out.